Hello everyone. Let's proceed on to the next chapter, Rights of NCERT Political Theory. The first question and the first thing that is usually asked is what are rights? So a right is essentially an entitlement or a justified claim. It denotes what we are entitled to as citizens, as individuals and as human beings. Now, from the perspective of civil services examination, because ultimately you want to clear this exam. From this perspective, the definition will remain the same. Rights are claim, claim upon whom? To which authority are we claiming these attributes or claiming some entitlements? So we are claiming these rights from law. We are claiming these rights from the machinery that is enacted by such law. Or we are seeking such rights, we are seeking the settlement of such claims or entitlement of such claims from the authority or from an system or an organization that has been authorized by law. So these rights are claimed between individual and law. And why is this the case? How can how can an individual seek entitlement or claim from law or any legal body? The reason for this is it's a historical reason. So let's first trace the chronology. So from 1757 to 1947, the British or the European powers, they colonized India. They kept exploiting our country, and they did it in a legal but malicious way. So a law is a blind sword. A law is a sword or a tool or a weapon that can be used against or that can be weaponized against mm, poor people, or it can be weaponized in a malicious way. That's why we say law is blind. Law is blind in the sense that law does not discriminate between classes of people, between gender of people, between castes and financial and spiritual and psychological any such status. Law will consider an individual as an individual. Anyway, so from 1757 to 1947, uh, we were a colony. We were a colony of European power, especially the British. And during this colonization, and by the effect of such exploitation, our freedom fighters or nationalist leaders, they try to mobilize people on various grounds. Some were social, some were economic, some were religious, but they did manage to mobilize people. And people, when they mobilized, they when they came together, when they were united, this unity or this mobilization, it could happen only on certain grounds, certain common grounds, or certain common promises. So this mobilization, it happened on two grounds. So the first one is common grounds, common things, and second one is promises. And first such promise was that if people together, if they can expel the British, they will gain freedom. And freedom here, it means the the new the breed of leaders, the new breed of rulers and political leaders, they will not exploit them. So it was some kind of an open secret, an open promise that if we, the nationalist leader, we are mobilizing the common people or people from all walks of life, people from different strata of Indian society, and if we are seeking their help to expel the colonizers, to expel the exploiters, it was an open secret and it was an open promise that their power, which they will get after expelling the British, that power will not be used against the common masses. So it means there will be something, some claim for being a part of this mobilized mass. I put it in another way, to expel the British, all walks of people or or all section of Indian society, they needed unity. All section of Indian society, they needed unity, unity in their effort, sincerity and dedication and commitment in their effort, to so that when they rise against the British will leave our country. But the sections of our society were so diverse and so fragmented, both in their approach and both in their desires. Fragmentations in their approach, their lifestyle, their cultures, and their expectations. So people were not united. This whole explanation, it means that the diverse section of our Indian society, they were not united. They could not stand because there were a lot of differences between them, and the primary difference was it regard it sorry it concerned with rights. As I already told you multiple times, that Indian society was highly fragmented society, diverse and highly fragmented society, and different sections of people, they could not come together because there were a lot of differences in their cultures, lifestyle, in their approach, in their worldview, in their opinion, their perspective. So they were different people, and different people could not come together unless they are common grounds. So the entitlement of rights, it is one such right, one such common ground, because in the hierarchical society of India, in which caste discrimination, in which untouchability, in which upper caste, lower caste thing, majority religion, minority religion thing. So to thwart such differences, or to make even those differences, certain common rights needed to be given. And it is on these open promises, it is on these claims that our freedom struggle was fought and won. And once the British were expelled, our freedom fighters or nationalist leaders, they um, adopted the constitution. They first drafted, they discussed it, they deliberated upon it. It took them nearly 3 years. They took opinion of most of the people. They try to take opinion and views of most of the people, and many such general view, they were discussed and deliberated upon. This was how our constitution was drafted, and we adopted it on 26 November 1949. And finally, this constitution was enacted on 26 January 1950. These are the basics, and we will know about them later. But my point is, these rights, rights were such claims that fostered the unity that was needed to expel the British. And once we kept our promise that our unity is going to bring about a change, in the leadership. In the same way, our nationalist leaders, they kept the promise that once the British are expelled, your rights will be protected. Now coming back to the NCERT. So these rights are entitlement or claims that citizens, they seek from their government or the authority, whichever authority that has been authorized by the law. Rights are primarily those claims that people need, that are necessary for leading a life of respect and dignity. And rights are the claims that represent conditions that are needed as a source of self-respect and dignity. For example, right to livelihood, that forms a part of Article 19, a fundamental right. So right to livelihood, it is necessary for leading a life of dignity. And as I um already elaborated it, that during the freedom struggle, all such things were discussed throughout the nook and corner of India. And why this happened, I have already elaborated it. That these were the open secret. These were the open promises that were exchanged between the common masses and the nationalist leaders. That if they are helping them, if they are coming together, if they are breaking their differences, if they are trying to come up and trying to resolve the issue, this thing would lead to a scenario in which their life, their livelihood, their rights, they will be protected. And such those promises were protected, those promises were kept, and all such rights have been put in Part 3 of a constitution known as fundamental rights. Now, Article 19 is one such right, and it concerns the right to livelihood. And as you know, if you want to do anything, if you want to lead even a basic life, even if you want to become a simple teacher, a primary school teacher, you you should have the freedom to pursue your career, and you should have the right to pursue this career. Even this career of primary school teacher, this may seem insignificant before the career prospect we see now, but the right should be available there. It should the atmosphere, the condition, the society, the situation you are in, they should not hinder you, they should not stop you from pursuing a career, whether it is significant or insignificant. In the same way, this topic is talking about the rights that are necessary, rights that should be there so that you can pursue a life. And then right to express freely. Now, expression of our original thinking, and the expression through free speech, it is necessary in order to bring about, first, your talent, your hidden art, and second, free speech is necessary to keep those in power checked, which means Democracy, it is expression of free will, expression of free will. And as you might have known it by now, democracy is rule of people by people, or you can say rule by people. So people are ruling themselves, and people can rule themselves only if all the people they have a right to express them. So the expression of free will or uh, free speech, both of these things are necessary for a healthy democracy. Political power has a corrupting influence, and those in power, the political leaders, they get corrupted easily, or they can get influence easily unless they are checked. Checked by means unless they are controlled or kept in control. And in democracy, when people are expressing themselves uh, via free speech, if such free speech, if it is hindered, the dimension of reasonable restriction will be there. If you have free speech, it does not mean that you spread hatred or you speak um, ill about any person. I'm talking about expression of wrongdoings of political leaders, expression of what's wrong. If something is being done in a wrong way, if the resources are distributed in a wrong way, if the political power it is being sidelined, if loopholes are being created to for the detriment of a certain section, in such a way your free expression, the free your free speech, it is necessary. Now another ground on which rights have been claimed is that they are necessary for well-being. It is already the same thing. Rights help individual to develop their talents and skills, and one such is the like right to education, Article 21. And right to education, it is necessary, and it is necessary so much so that it should be designated as a universal right. And one such example is there that talks in a obverse way. It is prohibited the use of prohibited drugs, the consumption of prohibited drugs or alcohol. So we know that the consumption of drugs and alcohol, it is injurious to one's health. So we cannot insist that we have a right to inhale, inject drug or smoke tobacco. Yes. So smoking or drinking or taking drugs, these cannot be cited as rights. So the point here is about the attributes or the claims that should be justified as rights. And it is a valid point in in the sense that the rights that we are seeking, that right need to be justified. And yeah, this concept is already implicit in what we have already talked about. Uh, Let me clarify this thing. When we talk about the freedom struggle, we we discuss this thing that the then people of that time, people or the people of freedom struggle, those people, they came together and they discussed those common grounds upon which they are ready to fight, the common grounds upon which they are ready to come together, and the unity, it could be ensured. So those common grounds, they could not have been otherwise, they could not have been unjustified. such as the people of that time. Let me take into the diversity that was present at that time to help you understand this situation clearly. There were SCs, there were STs, there were minority religions, there were OBCs, there were women, there were rulers, princes, jagirdars, thakurs, village kotwals. So such was the diversity of people at that time. So, and to bring all these people from all different regions together, they they could not have been brought together unless they were they were ready for some common grounds. They were ready to accept the common demands that has been discussed and justified. So then at the time of freedom struggle, all the demands that were all the claims that were accepted, they were justified. But the example that has been taken here, it cannot be overlooked. Yes, because the nationalist leaders, they have gone, the constitution, it has been amended a lot of more than 100 times, and the future crops of leaders, they need to keep this in mind that rights, if they want to bring more rights, or if you want to curtail some rights, if they want to cut down some rights from constitution, those rights need to be valid, those rights need to be justified. It should not happen that one day, just because a lot of people are smokers or a lot of people are dopers, they give right to take drugs or right to inhale or uh, smoke tobacco and make it a right. It should not be there. Now let's talk about the source of these rights. Where have these rights come from? And how has the concept of rights come into fashion? In the 17th and 18th century, some political theorists, they believed that rights are given by nature or gods, and they were called natural laws. And by this, they meant that these rights were not conferred by any ruler or society, but rather we are born with them. These rights are natural because they are given by nature, and they identify three such rights: the right to life, right to liberty, and right to property. And all other rights are derived from these basic rights. And during that time and in the present time also, this forms a powerful notion. In recent times, this term human rights, it is used more than natural rights. And human rights are rights that are there, or that are entitled to people just because they are human. And these rights are increasingly seen as guarantees that human beings themselves seek or arrive at in order to live a minimally good life. In short, in other way, it means some rights are there, some rights are inherent or innate with our birth, which are called human rights. So if we are born as human, we get entitled to some rights, and these human rights, you can know all rights which help us live a minimum level of dignity, a minimum level of meaningful life. So such minimum life, or the entitlement that helps help us live in such a minimum level of dignity. They are known as human rights. And now the notion of universal human rights, it has been used by people all over the world to challenge laws which segregate them. Right now, there are many such laws. In the present time, there are not many such laws which segregate people. There are not many such limitations that separate people based on their race or gender or caste. But just a few decades ago, the situation was totally different. And women in India, they got universal adult franchise in 1947. So it means all women of India or the Indian women before 1947, they were not entitled to universal adult franchise, or they could not vote in election, they could not contest for election. So this voting and electing right, these were given in 1947 itself. And in United States, the largest icon of democracy, the US, the US itself has given its women the right to vote in 1960s, just a few decades back. And you might have heard about the institution of slavery, the institution of caste system, the institution of bega or forced labor. So such system, such oppressive and discriminatory system was rampant all over the world. And many such people, or the people of these communities, people who were slaves, people who were oppressed in the caste system, people who were uh, dying under the weight of beggary or the forced labor, they rose against such segregation or such segregating laws by citing the human rights or the concept of human rights. So let's take a brief about it. Natural and human rights. The ancient philosophers, especially of Roman and Greek Empire, they talk about natural rights. Natural rights are those rights that are given by nature. And later on, these rights, they they transform into human rights. So which which means that a person who is born a human had some right that he needs in order to live a dignified or meaningful life, or rights which help in a man to live a minimum standard of dignified life. Now the list of human rights people have claimed have expanded over the years as society faced newer threats and challenges. Uh, right now, the demands of LGBTQ community, the first one. The second one is demand of climate refugees. The third demand is about the persecuted people. And the fourth demand is about displaced people. All such people, all these newly exploited people, they have come into a larger picture, and they are asking and they are citing the same human rights. They are claiming the same human rights on the ground that if they are born as humans, they need these rights to live a minimum standard of dignified life. So LGBTQ community, uh, You might have, you may know about them: lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and all such people who do not come under, who or do not recognize under the binaries of man and women. Second were climate refugees, such as, if you do not, if you are not aware about this, because of climate change, the temperature is increasing. Earlier, the Earth was 15 degree, and now the Earth has already got hotter by 2 degrees centigrade. So this may not seem a lot, 15 degrees centigrade, but it is not about a temperature of a country or a place. It is the overall temperature of Earth, and 15 degree was the optimum temperature that was needed to keep the atmosphere in a stable condition. But even after the 29 or 30 sessions of Conference of Parties of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, it means the climate talks have been going on for 30 years, 3 decades, but we could not stop the Earth from breaching the temperature, and now we have crossed the temperature by 2 degrees centigrade, which we had already feared. The talks have been going on to prevent the world from breaching 1.5 degrees centigrade. But while we were talking, while we were debating it for so many years, we are already breached the temperatures. So why this temperature was breached? The the glaciers started melting. There were erratic rainfall everywhere. The climate it became unpredictable, and some areas that faced the climate change issues, such as wildfire, glacial melts, cloudburst, flash floods, thermal expansion, and sea level rise. So these are the adverse impact of climate change that has come to come to our news, come to our knowledge as of now. But the people, those who have suffered by these adverse effects, by wildfire, glacier melt, cloudburst, or any such impacts, they were displaced from their places. They had to move from the place they were living in, such as sea level rise. So the many such small coastal communities, when the sea level rose, they had to move their houses. They have to uh, move their families to somewhere safe. In as such, so the people who suffered from all such, they were known as climate refugees. And now these climate refugees who have lost their livelihood, who have lost their families, who have lost mm, their houses, they are seeking justice by citing the same human rights. Persecuted people, so everywhere when uh, the wave of authoritarianism and majoritarianism, authoritarianism and majoritarianism both are same. It means that either a group or a majority section are controlling the major power, controlling the politics of a country. In such a case, the minority becomes the easy target. And when minority becomes the easy target, they are persecuted. And there are many such examples everywhere. And such persecuted people, when they have nowhere to go, or if they are forced to leave their houses and their livelihood behind, what could they do? Ultimately, they also seek justice, they also seek rights, so that even if they go somewhere, they will not be persecuted anymore and they can live a minimum standard of dignified life. And finally, the displaced people, the people who are displaced for any other reason, including the one I mentioned here. So, all such people, all such a new category of people, they are also citing and they are also looking for their claim settlement or their entitlement by citing the human rights. Now, the next topic, legal rights and the state. Now, let's talk about the relationship between legal rights and the state. While claims for human rights appeal to our moral self, the degree of success of such appeals depends on a number of factors. This line means, yes, I can claim rights for being a human. I can seek entitlement of human rights because I was born a human. But who am I seeking these rights to? Most probably, these are human rights. It's uh, if somebody is working against me in a negative and harmful way, all I can do is to um, invoke the moral self, the moral stature of being equal, the moral stature of a moral appeal to ensure the protection of human rights. But other than that, other than the moral appeal, rights or human rights, they become important when they are endorsed by government or endorsed or they are recognized by government. So in such a case, in the former case, when it was just a moral appeal and somebody was negatively affecting me, in that scenario, I could only appeal to the moral self of the person and I could only cite my own stature, my own status as a human being. But when such rights are endorsed and recognized by the state or by government, in such a case, they become something special. They become primary. Uh, let's have a look here. Constitution represent the highest law of land, and so constitution recognition of certain rights give them a primary importance. Yes. So other than moral appeal, if constitution recognize them, if uh, if supreme law of a country, it recognize human rights or it recognize certain rights, those rights will gain a primary importance. And in our country, we know them as fundamental rights that are placed in Part 3, and the serial is from Article 12 to 35. Now, how important is the legal recognition or legal or constitutional recognition of rights? So, take a look here. So important is the legal and constitutional recognition of claims that several theories define rights as the claims that are recognized by state. So it becomes another definition of rights, that rights are claim or entitlement that we seek, and who we are seeking it from law, or we are seeking it from the authority that has been authorized by the law. So the authority that has been authorized by law to implement itself is the state, or here we are talking about government of India. So, so this legal or constitutional recognition of these rights, it gives us a power. It gives us the rights that we can claim from the government of India. The legal endorsement certainly gives our rights a special status. Next, rights are directed toward the state. So now we are talking about Indian Constitution and government of India and people, Indian citizens. So in our country, these rights are claimed towards the state. We are seeking these rights from the state, from the government, and through these rights, people make demands upon the state. Uh, an example is given here. When I assert my right to education, when I say I have a right to education, I have a claim of education upon the government, I call upon the state or the government to make provisions for my basic education. In other words, right place an obligation upon the state to act in a certain kinds of way. Yes. So now we have left the abstract or the philosophical arena, and now we are talking about the constitutional avenue. So in our constitution, in the Indian constitution, Indian citizens place an obligation upon government of India to act in certain kind of way, and which means our claim, it direct the state to act in a certain direction or act in a certain way, such as if I want, uh, I invoke my right to life, that is Article 21, which is a fundamental right. So when I invoke the right, or when I claim the right to life, I am claiming and I putting an obligation upon the government of India to to ensure such conditions, to ensure the atmosphere, to ensure the situations in a way that my right to life can be ensured and secured. So, in other words, my right places certain obligation upon the state to act in a certain way. So, it directs the state. And yes, this is because we are following a law. And in our country, the law, the constitution is supreme. And the state, the government of India, it is an instrument or the authority that has been authorized or has been enacted by the law itself to act on its behalf. So this government, it is working for us. So when we seek rights, we are directing the government to act in our benefit. But other than this positive obligation, there is also a negative side to it, which is rights not only indicate what the state must do, but it also says what the state should not do. So earlier we have talked about the positive side or what the state must do. But these rights also tell the state what are the things that it should not do or must refrain from doing, such as my right to liberty, that is Article 19, right to freedom. It suggests that the state cannot arrest me at its own will. It cannot wishfully or willingly, it cannot arrest me. The gist of the whole topic has been written here. Our rights ensure that the authority of a state is exercised without violating the sanctity of individual life and liberty. So the state may have some responsibility, the state may have some authority, but it cannot exercise its authority, it cannot exercise its power in a way that harms individual life and liberty without any due cause. The state may be a sovereign authority, the state may be powerful, but the state exists not for its own sake, but for the sake of individual. Yes. So why are the state and the law is in its place? Why do they exist? They exist because of people. They are there because people authorize them. In our country, the law is supreme, and the law, the constitution, it has been enacted by people. Law did not create people. People created law. So in the same way, the state works for the benefit of individual and not the otherwise. People do not work for the benefit of the state. So it is people who matter more, and it is their well-being that must be pursued by government in power. And since we are democracy, all their actions are accountable, and they must not forget that the law exists to ensure the good of people, not the reverse, not the contrary. Uh, People do not exist to ensure the good of law. So that's it. We will talk about the rest of the chapter in the next part. Thank you.